Hello, I'm Joe at the Tacoma McLindens, and I work in the nursery and garden. And one aspect of gardening that I really enjoy is starting my own plants from seeds. Now, many times I have a variety of plant I'd like to grow, and it's just not something that's available in the trade, or I want to get a jump start on my plants because, as you know, in the Puget Sound area, our springs are long and cool, and our summers always aren't that warm. So the bigger a plant I can put outside in the spring, then the more likely I am to get flowers or vegetables from that particular plant. Now, starting seeds, it's pretty basic, but there are some things that are essential points to consider. And the first is the type of soil in which you start the seeds. Now, this is a mix called Black Gold Seedling Mix. It contains peat and vermiculite. Peat absorbs moisture, nutrients. The vermiculite gives it aeration so it doesn't stay too wet. But actually, out of the bag, I find that it does stay a little wetter than I would like. So I use 3 parts of the mix to 1 part fine vermiculite, and that increases the aeration of the mix. Now, if you don't use a bag mix, you can make your own. As I mentioned, peat is one of the essentials of your mix. Just make sure the peat has been treated with a wetting agent, because if it hasn't, it's very difficult to wet. But your other source or potential source for holding moisture and nutrients is coconut husk, core. And this is an example of this. You buy it as a brick, just add water, it expands and gives you a very nice medium. But again, to lighten it up so it doesn't stay too wet, you use vermiculite, either the fine vermiculite or a medium grade vermiculite. And some people just use vermiculite to start seeds. That's another option. So once you do determine what mix you'd like to use, then we go ahead and think, well, okay, what kind of container do I want to use? Now, peat pellets, and actually this isn't peat, this is the coconut fiber again. These work very well. You buy them like this, soak them in water, you end up with something like this. And then say, we're going to start some zinnias. So I just take a couple of seeds, place them in the hole, and pinch it closed. And now I'm ready to go. Other options are pots that are made of the coconut husk, such as this, or pots that are made of, and again it says Jiffy strips. Peat, actually it's more of a paper product. And then other options are plastic pots. And I find that I use all types of pots. The plastic I can reuse. If I want to disinfect it, I use a mix of 19 parts water, 1 part bleach, clean the pot and reuse it. The advantage of these is once the plant is the size I want, I just take it, pot and all, and put it in the ground. And this works really well for plants like squashes, cucumbers, and gourds. So we'll go ahead and plant a few things. Now, one essential thing, this was the zinnia I planted. Make sure you look at the back of the seed package, because it tells you how deep to plant the seed, whether the seed needs light to germinate or must germinate in total darkness, the temperature the seed needs to germinate. The information is there, and if you don't find it on the package, then check on the internet and get that information because it's essential. For instance, something like a petunia, well, the seed is very small, and check the package. Yes, we just take the seed, and in this case, I just take a pinch and just roll the small seeds between my fingers, and then lightly press them into the soil. If you have seed that's even smaller, one option is to get a old salt shaker, a little bit of horticultural sand, add the seed, put on the top, mix, and then seed. So that works really well with tiny seeds. Fortunately, most seeds are a little bit easier to plant. So using the plastic pot, add the soil, shake off the excess, lightly tamp it down. And then I'll go ahead and plant some broccoli. Now you think, well, broccoli, I could see that directly in the garden. That is true. But there's sometimes our spring tends to be cool and wet for an extended period of time. We don't get a lot of really good breaks to go out and work in the garden. So just in case I can't go outside and direct seed, I'll start a few seeds ahead of time. And generally 2 to 3 seeds per cell. And I can always divide them if I have really great germination and get 2 or 3 plants. And then again, just tamp them lightly. And since I know that the broccoli seed needs to be covered, instead of just using additional soil, I just top with vermiculite. The vermiculite won't form a crust. It's very easy for the seedlings to emerge through it. And yet it also will hold just enough moisture so that the seeds don't dry. So then really all I do is add the appropriate label and I'm ready to go. And one thing on labels, if you notice this is kind of an odd one. This was a mini blind. Didn't need it anymore. Took the individual pieces, cut them up in little rectangles. Using a pencil, just write the information. In this case, broccoli, and we've got Calabrese as the type, the date, and then an abbreviation for who provided the seed. In this case, it was Ed Hume. And then I put that with the seed, and I'm ready to go. So once we have some seeds planted, that next critical thing is temperature. Something like broccoli, I can put it under a light table. It's going to germinate, no problem, because it germinates with cooler temperatures. But things like the zinnia or something like squash, the petunias, they want warmth. They need warm soil. If the soil is cold, they try to sprout, they try to grow. More often than not, they just rot. So I have my flat, some of my seeds that are planted. Notice the flat does not have drain holes because I want to bottom water. When you water from the top, a particularly young seedling, you run the risk of actually causing it to move from its normal growth or fall over. So we're going to bottom water. Now what I have is a seed propagation mat, or a heat mat. This will keep the soil temperature about 10 degrees warmer than the air temperature. So if I keep my house at 68 degrees, then these were going to feel like 78 degrees. And that is a perfect temperature for rapid germination of seeds that need warmth. So that's the next thing. And again, that information is on the seed packet or available on the internet. Is it a seed that needs cool temperatures to germinate, or does it need additional warmth for the quickest germination? Now, if you started seeds and had an issue with, okay, the seedling comes up and it just keeps getting longer and longer and longer, and then you finally start to see some leaves, and by that time the whole thing falls down, that indicates the seedling was not receiving enough light. So that's our third critical component, and there are a number of options. I use fluorescent bulbs, but several choices. This is the old-fashioned T12 grow light. So when you're looking for lights, look for daylight, look for the word full spectrum, or go ahead and buy a light that has been balanced for plant growth. Now, these are not real bright, so in this instance I would probably lower this, and this actually is for a T5, but if it were for a T12 I would lower it about 6 inches from the top of the seed containers, and then as the seeds sprout, gradually move it up. A light that is more efficient, and personally this is the type I use for my seed starting on my seed starting tables, this is a T8. The light is brighter, but it works really well if you have seedlings that require high light, tomatoes, peppers, for example. You can put this fairly close, more like 8 inches, and then as they grow, raise it. But if you have seeds that are more part sun type plants, then you can start at a higher level. And you notice the nice thing about this type of arrangement, you can move your light up and down to accommodate for the type of bulb you use or the stage of how far the seedling has grown. Now, T5s are very efficient, but also very, very bright. And you think, well, that little thing? You'd think the T12 would be brighter, but that's not the case. These are very bright, so for a lot of seedlings, you're going to have your light fixture maybe about at this level. And then if you notice the seeds do seem to be stretching, those young seedlings, you can always lower it. But it's a little bit trial and error, yes, but determining at what level to have the light is critical because you want a seedling that is really strong. So we know that we have our proper media, proper temperature with our propagation mat for those seeds that do like warmth, the proper amount of light, so bottom water to maintain even soil moisture, not too much, not too wet. But one other thing we're going to need to do as our little seedlings start to grow is fertilize, because the soil we've used does not have any nutrient in it. So some options for that are to use an organic type of product, organic fertilizer. These fertilizers are liquids that you dilute in water. They're very gentle, very slow release, but these are the products I like to use on my seedlings. The fish fertilizer, the Dr. Earth All-Purpose, and then kelp, because the kelp fertilizers, I found they contain a lot of different compounds that really accentuate seed growth. So our little seedlings are growing well, everybody's happy, and hey, it's about time to move those guys out. Well, one thing we'll want to do is harden off the seedlings before we actually plant them into the garden. And that means taking our tray or taking our pots of young seedlings, we put them outside in a shaded location and allow the plants to kind of experience normal conditions. I mean, so far we've kind of babied them along, so reality check, it's a rough, cold world out there. The 2 to 3 week hardening off, the growth slows, the plant adjusts, acclimates, so after we've hardened them off, then we can plant them in the garden and there won't be a lot of shock to the plant. Now, if we do have a lot of little tiny seedling type plants, for instance, I seeded this pot with petunias. One thing, I'll probably need to remove those, put them in a larger pot, grow them on before I actually do move them outside. And just kind of tools like this will help you dig around and separate those little tiny plants to put or transplant into a larger plant. So starting plants from seed, yeah, it's basic, but it's a lot of fun, and as long as you keep in mind soil, temperature, and light, your seed starting successes will abound. Thanks.